My guest today is Cristiana Crin. She's the founder of Perpetuum Designs, an interior design studio based in Chicago that works primarily in the hospitality and restaurant industries. There was something that struck me when we initially spoke about doing an episode. When I asked Cristiana what Perpetuum Designs does, she responded with, "We convert spaces into memorable experiences." It's this focus on the customer that creates alignment with the vision for a renovation and the outcome, and you can tell when it's done right. I wanted to dive into Cristiana's design philosophy, but the conversation turned to talk more about the project management process that she goes through. We all manage projects on a daily basis, but there are methods and best practices that professionally trained project managers use to keep their work on the right track, delivered on time, and that all stakeholders are happy through the process. What was to be an interior design episode turned into a goldmine of ideas that you can use today to make a difference in your project management process. So let's get to it. This is episode 39 of the Proven Principles podcast, Cristiana Crin on project management fundamentals. Enjoy. Hey, Cristiana, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. It's good to have you on because I think we're going to talk about an interesting discussion. We have an interesting discussion today, an interesting topic where we're going to go down the design rabbit hole a little bit, but I also want to touch on the project management side of things because I think that's a personal interest that I've had for a long time, even thinking about going to get certified as a project manager. I haven't done it, but I think there's a lot of skills in project management that the listeners could benefit from. So before giving too much away, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, how you got to where you are?
I was born and raised in Transylvania, so Halloween is usually an interesting holiday for me, being here in the States. And I traveled to the States 15 years ago. I was young and eager for adventure, and I'm actually one of those people that won a visa lottery. So I thought, why not? And then I came and I landed in Detroit, and then I said, okay, you know what, if this is the American dream, they can have it. I want nothing to do with it. And then I bought a one-plane ticket to go back. And a friend of mine convinced me to come to Chicago, and I was hooked. And Chicago became my home. Mm-hmm. And a few years later, I had a job. I was working in a chiropractic office, and I wanted to do something different. And I was lucky enough to get a job in an architectural company, just as an executive assistant, nothing fancy. But I fell in love. I knew 2 weeks in the job that this is where I want to spend the rest of my life. And this is the industry that I can make a difference. And this is the industry that I find myself doing for the rest of my life and doing it well. Mm-hmm. And funny thing, you mentioned we're going to talk about project management. My first job after I graduated from the executive assistant position was project management assistant. And the more I got into it, the more I fell in love and the more curious I got. And I'm that type of person that once I'm in love with something, I want to learn and I want to find out every single detail and just everything and anything there is to know about it. Mm-hmm. A few years after I decided that I'm going to go back to school and I have a journalism degree from back home. But that was not going to happen here in the States, definitely not. I did put it to test, though. I had an internship with ABC7 at some point for about 6 months, and then that just didn't work out. It was definitely not for me. So I decided to go and learn design and go back to school. And I always knew once I started this that I'm going to have my own company at some point. And here I am, and this is Perpetuum Designs. And, I started with residential, and then I moved into commercial. And then it was an accident that I started doing restaurants. But this is it. This is what I am meant to do.
That's where you are today. And I mean, and what a great city to be doing design work in architecture work in Chicago. I mean, if anybody has not been to Chicago, I mean, it's a stunningly beautiful city. And there's even the architecture tour through downtown, right on the river. So you kind of, it sounds like you fell into the right place, and you're doing the thing that you were always intended to do.
Oh, yes, 100%. I do not regret it at all. Yes.
That's so good. Very lucky too. A lot of people, I think, wish that they could have that level of fulfillment in where they are and what they're doing.
Yeah.
What can you just give the listeners a little bit of a background on Perpetuum Designs? So this is your company. What do you focus on?
The last couple of years, I decided that I'm going to take the turn and do hospitality design. As I mentioned before, I started with residential. I still do it, and it's fun most of the times. But once I fell into the commercial line of business, I found out that I have more room for creativity. And one of the things that I love doing is, it's going to sound like bragging a little bit, but I love turning heads. I love when people come in and they have to stop when they come into a space, because they have to take a moment to look around and acknowledge what's around them. And that's why restaurants and the hospitality business is the best for it. I love working with murals, and I love working with graphic designs on walls, and just do unexpected things that people have to stop and take a look and think, is this supposed to be here? Well, we're not sure, but it looks fantastic, and it's shocking.
When we got connected, I'm sorry to cut you off, but when we got connected initially, we did an introduction call. You showed me some images of a restaurant you were working on at the time with a big mural on it. Which restaurant was that? Because I'd love to link to it in the show so people can see what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So I am finishing. There are 2 restaurants that I'm doing right now that I'm finishing, and we were a little bit behind it. And this goes back to project management, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. Yes. So one is called the Jibarito Stop. It's a Puerto Rican cuisine, and it's in Pilsen neighborhood, Chicago. And the other one is a brand new concept. You won't find this on the map, and there's no reference on social media yet. It's a brand new restaurant. It's the second restaurant that is being opened by this owner. We are not done yet. It's called La Marimba, and it's a Mexican cuisine restaurant.
Okay.
And they are totally different concepts, but equally as fantastic.
I'll link to the first one in the show notes. I'll find it and put it up, because it was, I think, what you were talking about initially with doing murals and having striking design, that you could talk about it all day, but you got to see it.
Oh yeah.
And that's probably interesting about what you do, is like, it can be really hard, I think, to explain something so visual, especially if it's kind of like in your head, getting those words out in a way that people understand what you're trying to do. I imagine is tricky sometimes.
It is, but you know what? I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been in the design industry for 10 years. My company will be now 5 years old in April. But I have learned that you have to adapt. And one of the things that I started doing, and I've been doing it successfully for the last couple of years, is in my proposals, I usually include photoshopping. So I do it myself sometimes, and depending on the workload, sometimes I source it out. But I do offer, I have to offer Photoshops of the place. So what I do is I go in, I take photos of the space, and instead of doing renderings, which is much more expensive and much more, I don't want to say realistic, but when you Photoshop something into if it's an existing space and if there's furniture, it's so much more easier to just Photoshop. And this gives the client an understanding of what I mean and what I want to do. And one of the things that I've been grateful for is that every time, that I present, I do the mood boards, I do the detailed spreadsheets with all the furniture, the labor, the contractors, all of that. When they get to the last pages and they get to the Photoshops, and they get an idea of how it's gonna look, that's where they usually tend to spend the most time. They flip through the pages, and once they get to the end of it, they just take it and they take it all in. And that's how I can say that I have been successful doing Photoshops. It helps.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think about a lot of the restaurant redesigns and the concept changes that I've done. In particular, I mean, because it's so transferable into the food and beverage space, but in the hotels that I've worked with over the years, putting together the financial projections, we spend so much time making sure that the numbers line up and that everything makes sense, and you do a good market analysis and you understand what's going on and maybe talk to some customers. And you got all this data and you put it into a presentation and everyone just sort of looks at it and glosses over it. And then you get to the food pictures about the concept that you're trying to bring into the place, about the style of food and what the mood is. And that's where everybody usually spends most of their time focusing on. It's pretty powerful, the imagery. So I guess it's a good way of saying, like, anybody who's listening, if you are struggling to get your vision or your idea across, maybe you have a boss that you're working with on this. Sometimes finding visuals that make sense to what you're presenting is a very effective way of getting buy-in to what you're trying to do.
100%. And you mentioned cost. I think that people have this idea that whatever they are planning to do in a space, it's going to cost an arm and a leg, or it's going to cost so much that they're not even considering it. I know that there are other designers and other decorators and space specialists out there that to have a consultation and just to get like a few pointers, get a little bit of direction. It's not going to cost that much.
Mm-hmm.
And today, we all have to learn to adapt to whatever we have. Like we were talking about the Puerto Rican restaurant, the Jibarito Stop. We literally had under $30,000 budget for that restaurant, and we turned it around. We have new furniture. We made compromises here and there. And yes, if you're gonna go and take a magnifying glass and just kind of poke around, you're probably gonna see flaws. Just because we had to compromise on, like, some walls needed new drywalls. We didn't have the budget for that. So, I did murals on walls to trick the eye into not seeing those imperfections. If you're gonna look close, you're gonna probably see that the drywall was not changed. But when you go in, and even when you sit close to a wall, you're not going to see that because, there's that mural over there and it tricks the eye, and it's so well executed. And the cost of doing that was 10% of the cost that would have had to be put in to do all the changes with the dry walls and the repainting. And, we just hired a local artist. I did the graphic design. I knew exactly what I wanted to have on there. And, the effect is 50 times better than if we would have just replaced the drywall and just hang some art. And I think that this was a perfect case of, yes, I think I'm a good project manager in terms of like putting numbers together. I don't supervise the construction and things like that. But when it comes to numbers, I know how to, I learned how to put like visual effects where they count the most. So
I like that. The and stretching the dollar, making wise decisions based off of a budget. I think, it would be, the other side of it's true. I mean, it would be very easy for someone in your position to say, you only have $30,000 for this space. Can't be done. I can't do it. You can't do the work, right? It's because you want to get a bigger project. You want to do a bigger job. You want to make sure you get the best of the best, whatever you're buying.
Of course.
But a lot of places, especially these days, hotels and restaurants simply don't have that kind of money. A lot of them don't have the money in good times, let alone right now. And so doing things that, to your point, trick the eye, that that can be very impactful for the customer, and probably get them some unintended positive social media attention too, right? Think like Instagrammable walls and that kind of thing. Like that is it safe to say that is a direction that design is definitely moving in? Maybe it's already moved in that direction.
It did. At least I know I'm doing it, and I'm doing it with every space that I'm doing. We were talking about, accent walls and, again, budget stretching. In this particular space, since we're talking about it, the Jibarito Stop, I have a corner where I have some grass coming out the wall. It's full, of course. It's a mixture of plastic plants and silk plants that I bought from the internet, and I was trying to source out the job of installing those plants on the wall, and I couldn't find anything or anyone that was affordable. So I bought a staple, and I went and I started stapling the plants myself. And it's funny because I spend a lot of time there doing a lot of crafting myself and just making sure everything is in place. And, you have to work the budget. I was seeing customers coming out. You're not allowed to sit in and dine in, but they were open for the public all the time. During this time, they were only closed when we had to install floors or when we had like a lot of construction to do. But I saw people coming in and I saw their reaction, not necessarily to what I was currently doing at the time, because people didn't, it was a mess. No one understood what exactly am I doing with that wall. But I got to see people's reaction to the murals, to the new lights, to everything that has changed since the last time that they were there. And, we're all in this for the money. Of course, we have to make a living, and we decided to go in business to make a profit. But that's not what this is about, or it shouldn't be all about the money. The reward that you have at the end, the reaction that you get from people. I know my customer is happy in the end, and I know that their customers are going to be happy to come into this space, and that's my reward.
I love that. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about project management.
Yes.
And you alluded at the beginning. You said that it's something that you've found your calling with it a little bit.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I think a lot of people will have a project that they need to see to completion. I mean, any just about any job in any industry is at some point you're going to have to kind of see through something big. But talk a little bit about the difference between the skills that you learn by going through a project management certification and just being responsible for seeing something through to the end. Because I feel like you could stumble your way through managing a project, or you could go methodically through a process that would make it a lot easier for you. So can you maybe describe a little bit?
Of course. So what I'm going to say, the most important thing, when you get a certification for project management, yes, you have to go through some courses that will explain in a lot of details what's expected to happen on a job. And those certifications come in place for a reason. Anyone can play the role of being a project manager, yes. But someone that hasn't gone through the process of getting that certification, they're going to come across problems that they will have no idea how to fix. Going through the process of getting certified doesn't only teaches you how to supervise specific jobs and how to make sure that the little jobs are done correctly, but they teach you how everything needs to come and be under the same plan. You have budget. You have to have extraordinary people skills. You know how you have to learn when to yell and when to look the other way and go in a different direction. You also have to understand that it's funny because you're doing project management with a bunch of little companies or little individuals that perform specific jobs. But in project management, a lot of times you have to manage the owner also, who may come with changes in the middle of a project and throw you in a totally different direction. And you will have to explain that with all of this, it will cost more, it will take much more time, and you have to be trained to know everything that's going to happen, everything that's on paper, and everything that's on paper is going to have to be realistic in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So you are going to have to explain all of this to the owner. And a lot of times the owners are going to come and they're going to say, I like what you do, or I like where this is heading, but I want to change. I was thinking, and I want to change this and this and that. A lot of times the clients will get into the design role or the architectural role, and they would, come with things that are not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So going through the process and learning how to do project management will be beneficial, first for the client, second for the person that hires you. That's not always the client, the end user of the space. It can be an architect, it can be even a general contractor, a designer. I sourced out projects before, and some companies I was lucky to work with, and some companies it was just a big headache, and I had to micromanage everything on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it just happens. But learning the process and going through the certification program, it helps 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it gives you the confidence that you know what you're doing, and that's a huge plus. So
yeah, no, I imagine it is. I mean, it gives you the confidence to be able to relay information in a very structured and methodical way. It really probably helps your thought process at the same time.
Of course, 100%.
Is there anything in particular that I mean, I know obviously you learned a lot going through the process, but is there something that really surprised you when you went through it that you thought you knew, but maybe you were completely wrong about?
How to get organized better on paper.
Interesting.
100%. Learning the production schedule and putting the construction schedule and the project schedule itself. This was something that I couldn't live without right now. And it doesn't matter if I'm project managing something or I'm just even doing design. I know exactly what I need to do. Even if I'm not a project manager, I know exactly what to put in application. And at the end, when I'm done with my part, I take everything I have and I pass it on to the project manager or the general contractor. And they have they have my schedule. They know when my furniture is coming. They know, how everything is supposed to fall in place. And
Mm-hmm.
when I am expected to start putting the last details in place, like the core, the light fixtures and the decor pieces are usually the last to come after the furniture. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I like the way that you present that. I think that's probably something that a lot of people could benefit from. Is simply that way of being able to visualize the steps that are involved and then put them together in a way that makes sense. That visualization is really hard for a lot of people to do.
It's hard maybe in the beginning, but I am convinced that if whomever I'm working with and whomever is in this business or this industry, if this is something that you're passionate about, you have to learn it at some point, because it makes your life so much easier. And it feels good when other people appreciate all the effort that I'm putting into it. Yes, 100%. But at the end of the day, I have to say that this is what makes my life easy. And because I am so detailed into explaining everything as best as I can, and it may take a little bit longer to do it, to put it on paper and to go like bullet points and, you know, spreadsheets and all of that. But no one ever comes at the end of the project or in the middle of the project to ask me, what did you mean by that? Or, you know, we had this schedule for a certain date, and you know, we were running a little bit behind. You know, can we make some changes, or, you know, can you adjust a little bit? Like, I'm very clear, we can, but it's going to cost you, because I have my people scheduled, and you had, like, everyone had a schedule, and this happens. It happens. It happens. People come to me because they're behind. Um, I'm almost never behind. And if I fall behind with something, I fall behind with something because of furniture vendors. That, you know, with COVID, it was a nightmare this year. But I don't like falling behind, because that's going to cost me money, and that's going to cost me time and headaches. And I have a little bit of OCD on the way that I work. And, you know, if I don't have if I don't have an answer, that it's going to keep me awake at night. And, you know, I'm going to make 100 phone calls to learn how I can get out of it. And it's just the way I am. So
Yeah.
I like to be detailed. And I think that the client appreciates it also. So
there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt, having been on the other side, you know, managing projects for and hiring somebody like yourself to see it through, having the person who's actually heading up the project be organized and, you know, have all of their I's dotted, T's crossed, makes my life easier, because I don't have to manage the project manager.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. If I do from a design phase, if I'm organized, even the project manager's life is going to be so much easier. And, you know, I always leave room, to be honest, depending on the size of the project, I always leave a week or two. I stretch it out, just because I usually like to be ahead of time. But if anything happens, I want to have a little room to wiggle with. And if I have a good schedule in place, then everyone knows what it's supposed to do. And it's something always happens. And it's just, let's be realistic, it's life. Things happen.
Plan
You
for
work
Murphy.
with people.
That's what we used to say. Plan for Murphy.
Yes, of course. And but this works. If I'm good, and if I'm detailed from the beginning, then everyone's life is easier, and they don't come back to bug me and take time off of my day to explain to them, and to just hold their hands through it. And, you know, if they make a phone call, then it's a yes or no answer, and that's it. But yeah, I try to do my best to be as detailed as possible.
So you've been around hospitality now for quite a long time. You see how people can get stuck in the day to day. They get very busy with different things that are going on. Always little mini issues to deal with everywhere. But if you could give people in the industry, whether they're in hotels or restaurants, a piece of advice on how to get better at just planning the little things, the little projects that they deal with on a daily or weekly basis, or maybe they have a quarterly goal that they're trying to achieve. Is there something that you learned through the project management process that might be transferable to other people
100%.
that would like make it better for them instantly?
I'm going to refer back to the schedule. Put it on paper, pin a date to it or a time to it. And if this is a to-do list, it helped me get organized. To-do lists with time frames, with dates on them. Have a deadline. I respond really well to deadlines. And as I said, maybe I'm a little OCD about certain things, but I wouldn't change anything for the world. Putting it on a calendar, and I know that I don't know the name of it, but salespeople have this like, I think it's called CRM system, and it's something. But see, I don't know much about it, but I know that there are different apps and different programs that can just alert you to something that's coming up. I'm old-fashioned in this way. I'm still with my calendar, with my phone calendar. I'm an Apple user, so everything is connected, and no matter where I go, it pops up. But calendars and to-do lists, they might be old-fashioned, but they work. And I find that they don't only work for me, but they work for everyone, no matter what type of system you're using. Just put it on paper, write it down, make sure you get to it, give yourself a deadline. And we're talking about professional people, because anyone that would do this, they didn't get to where they are today without, being persistent and without having discipline with themselves. So being organized in your to-do daily tasks, it helps everyone.
Yeah, I love that. It's such great advice. Cristiana, if people want to get a hold of you, learn a little bit more about Perpetuum Design, or see some of your projects that you've worked on in the past or that you're working on now, what's a good place for them to go?
Well, if they just Google Perpetuum Designs, I will pop up.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of pictures on Google. There's also a link to my website, which is simple, Perpetuum Designs. The website, however, hasn't been updated in quite some time. I'm working on it, and I'm hoping that it will be done in the next month or so. Instagram is where I go almost every day or twice a week, and then I would show. There's like construction sites over there sometimes, and or a new mood board or a color palette, or we just had a contract that was finished in Miami recently, and we got some pictures back from the architect. We never got the name of the client, which is fine. I was contracted just to do the interior design and the visual part, and we just got the final photos, and it's on Instagram, and I have a little before and after, and it turned out better than I expected. So
that's so good. Okay, well, I'll be sure to link to Perpetuum website through the show notes and your Instagram on the show notes. So if anybody wants to see your work, they can just go right there. But this was really helpful, Cristiana. Thank you so much for being on. And I think this project management in particular, especially with what we're dealing with these days in the industry, is an area that deserves more focus and can help a lot of people. So thanks for sharing your tips today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
This was my episode with Cristiana Crin. You can see more of her work on Instagram at Perpetuum Designs. I'll link to her profile in the show notes. You can see the full interview on YouTube. Just search the Proven Principles Podcast. And if you want to learn more about the show, just visit our website, theprovenprinciplespodcast.com. Finally, if you need help with a business strategy or just need someone to talk to about a tough problem in your hotel or restaurant, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can book a free call with me by going to knowinghospitality.com/contact. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.
For past episodes, show notes, or if you've got a story that might make a great episode, head on over to theprovenprinciplespodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, even on YouTube. And if you haven't already, don't forget to leave us a rating and a review. Thanks for listening to the Proven Principles Podcast.